community. And we have three guest speakers here with us tonight. Officer Damon Johnson from Montgomery County Police, uh, Jim Resnick, and I'm going to have the correct title for him. It's from the Montgomery County Fire Rescue Community Risk Reduction section. It's a long word there. And then our other big person in our community that most of you have seen, and if not, Lieutenant Ari Elkin will give a few statements for us also to keep us up on what's happened in the community within the last couple of weeks, I'll say. And I think you'll be happy to hear. So we're going to start off with Officer Damon Johnson coming to speak to us. A lot of you have talked about issues concerning living in a high-rise, what to do for safety reasons regarding police, and what to do for safety reasons regarding fire. And so we thought that it's time for us to have a town hall. This is the time of the season where, unfortunately, a lot of fires happen. We need to make sure our smoke detectors are working. You want to make sure if you live in a place that you have your own smoke detectors, and if you live in an apartment building, that make sure they check your smoke detectors as well. So recently, I know there's been some fires not far from our community, and I think the last one that I'm aware of was up on Pooks Hill, and that fire happened in a building, a high-rise complex, and it happened in the hallway and storage area, and it did spread pretty bad. Fortunately, no one was injured in that one. We're all familiar with the one that happened over in Silver Spring, which unfortunately is still in litigation. And so the swirling questions and discussions continue to go on about smoke detectors and sprinkler systems in Montgomery County. But without further ado, we're going to start with Officer Johnson.
Good evening, everyone. Can everyone hear me? All right. So I am Officer Damon Johnson with the Montgomery County Police Department, 2nd District. I've been with the police department just over 14 years. This is my second career. I started here in 2010. I started in the Wheaton District. I spent 3 years there. Then I went to backgrounds and recruitment for 5 years. I spent a short stint in SID. Then I moved over to the 3rd District, which is Silver Spring. And during the pandemic, I moved over to the 2nd District. And I've been there for just over 4 years, 2 years almost, where I've been in community services doing this type of thing here. So that's a little bit about me, okay? And my prior career was IT, so big difference. All right, so I know we have a couple speakers, so I'm not going to hold you long. But apartment and condo crime prevention. Crime prevention is the anticipation, the recognition, and the appraisal of a crime risk and the initiation of action to remove or reduce it. Crime prevention is directed at stopping the problem before it happens by reducing the opportunities for crime, strengthening communities and social structures. Theft. Theft from vehicles, theft of vehicles, burglaries, thefts, pickpockets, diversion schemes, mail, etc. October the 31st is the kickoff, but it's the kickoff for the holiday season, in which we typically see an increase in criminal activity. Factors that contribute to this trend: it gets dark earlier, it's colder, so people dress in more layers of clothing, hat, scarf, etc., and a lot of shopping goes on. So we have the cover of dark, we have the clothing, and we have more people out that are shopping later, okay? So typically the things we see in our communities now where people are walking around where it's lighter, you're going to see more people, you're going to see vehicles. So we talk about pedestrian safety and things of that nature as well. High-rise living presents unique challenges when it comes to crime prevention. With a large number of residents living in close proximity, it is essential to implement effective crime prevention strategies. Residents and property managers can work together to create a secure living environment. Key points: understanding the risk. High-rise living buildings can be vulnerable to various types of crimes, including burglary, vandalism, and unauthorized access. Some of these things are things that have actually taken place here in the community that I've heard about over the past few months with what we call piggybacking. When someone comes into a building, that's a secure building. However, someone follows behind you, but without checking or making a quick diversion and say, oh, maybe you can throw them off and say, oh, maybe I'm in the wrong place. Instead of going into the building, maybe you go somewhere else or go back to your car so that they can't get in that particular building. But once you have someone get into the building with you, now everyone is vulnerable because you never know where they're going to go. You don't know what their intentions are or what they're going to do. So if you have something like that, always have your cell phone with you, okay? Let a friend know where you are, where you're coming from, and maybe that'll help you so that when you come into the building and something like that happens, you can alert them and maybe they can alert us so that maybe we can come out and make sure and check that suspicious situation out, okay? Collaborative efforts. Crime prevention in high-rise living requires a collaborative effort between residents, property managers, and security personnel. Building a sense of community and encouraging active participation in safety initiatives can significantly enhance overall security. Protective measures. Implementing protective measures such as comprehensive security systems, regular maintenance, and community engagement can help deter criminal activity and create a safer living environment for all residents. Surveillance cameras. This is where we're heading with everything these days. These right here are very useful tools in helping us to solve crimes, to see exactly patterns and trends. Installation. Place surveillance cameras in strategic locations such as common areas, entrances, exits, hallways, and parking lots. This helps monitor activities and other potential criminals. Monitoring. Ensure that the cameras are monitored 24/7 by trained security personnel or a centralized monitoring system. This allows for quick response to any suspicious activities. Recording. Maintaining a recording system to store footage for at least 30 days. This can be useful for investigating incidents and providing evidence if needed. Access to control systems. Key cards. Biometric systems. Implement access control systems that use key cards, biometric systems such as fingerprints or facial recognition or PIN codes to restrict entry into authorized individuals only. Now, I know everybody has like key fobs for their particular buildings maybe. Okay. Okay, which is pretty much, we covered all three here, okay? Visitor management. Use visitor management systems to track and control access for guests and service personnel. Uber Eats, other deliveries for Amazon and things like that, they come in. This can include issuing temporary access cards or requiring visitors to sign in and out. Do any of the buildings have anything like that?
Some do. Some have, this is where it's different for each building. Some have, they lock their doors at a certain time.
Okay.
And then there has to have a system for them to get into the building. Some, they get in, they're supposed to give, the resident is supposed to give a code, temporary code to the building.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't.
Okay.
But the city, kind of, for the village towers, the city is not to be left downstairs.
Okay.
And that code to go up, and at the time the residents don't give them a code.
Okay, yeah, so we want to practice these things that help keep us safe. So you're my community partners, okay? So what I do, I can't do if I don't have you all and your participation. So when you call us for a crime that may have occurred or something that's suspicious or something that just seems out of place, we need you to give us that call and give us as much description as possible. We also need to make sure that you're all working together to ensure that these structures are safe from people who would be criminals. When it gets colder outside, what do we know about our transient population? They're looking for somewhere to stay. So any kind of crevice they can find, they're going to find their way in. They don't really mean any harm to anyone specifically, but they're looking for a warm place to be. That's why California has such a homeless population that's booming. It's warm all year round, okay? Security personnel. Employ security personnel to monitor access points, conduct regular patrols, and respond to any security breaches. Their presence can act as a deterrent to potential criminals.
One thing I will say, the majority of the buildings that I'm aware
Then yes.
And the concierge are not security people.
No.
So some buildings have 24-hour concierge, some
Hmm.
have no concierge, some have up until a certain time, 11 o'clock concierge.
Sure. And that's something that if there's a home security survey or survey, some type of security survey, you're looking for your structure, I can come out and take a look at that. However, you do have off-duty police here through a certain time of day, so you have someone that you can report these things to. Yes, ma'am. Hmm. Hmm. Okay. Okay. And some of that I'm going to be going through in the slide where it talks about those vulnerabilities. But those are things that are important to bring up to your management, to talk about when we talk about security, because that's a lot of what we're talking about now is how we gain access to buildings, especially these particular structures. So if you know that you have those spaces that are open like that, and they have very easy access to with no regard for anyone checking balances for that particular thing, you should be talking and raising those concerns to your management. Okay, and again, when I can come out and do a security survey, which I've done for some of the buildings and structures here in the villages, those are things that I can talk about and have recommendations for. Yes.
One piece so that everybody's aware of it and on it. Um, we did when I told you, the police committee and Officer Johnson and management did a walk, a safety walk in our village. We looked at every single property that belongs to the village. And we did it right at the cusp of this light changing into dark and light so that we could see what happens at night. And as Officer Johnson was saying, we did the outside because we don't have the permission to go on property. So we did an assessment, I should say we did an assessment of every single property used. And a report was sent to every single property management. Now, whether they presented that information to you or not, we don't know, but a report went to every single property here. And if there was an issue that we saw that could be or might be a problem, a separate report was written about your particular property, and it was stated what to do, what was recommended to help make it safe. So each property, the 9 building, residential buildings plus the businesses, received a report, a copy of that report.
Yes, ma'am. Okay. Okay. Sure. Okay, good question. So there are three different numbers in the county, and I'll always go through this because I want to make sure that no service is delayed when you're looking for it, and this is for everyone, okay? So we have 311. 311 is for your county services. So when you have things like your trash pickup, maybe EPA or tree down or something like that, even though we get the call for the tree down, this is something that you will call 311 for. When you have a non-emergency situation, but something that's going to require the police, something that's criminal, but it's not currently active, no one's actually being hurt, but it's something suspicious, that's the 301-279-8000. The district station is also 301-279-8000, the non-emergency number. And of course, 911 can be used at any time. It's not saying you have to use one or the other. Whatever you feel, and based on how it is to you, your perception, you make that phone call based on whichever number you choose to get to us. Okay? We'll reroute it whichever way, and we'll categorize it so that all the calls go into a priority order, and they'll go out that way. Now, as far as your building being open, The unfortunate part is that that's private property, so there's not a whole lot that we can do as police. However, what I can do is if you call me, I can put it in our system to do a check on patrol, and an officer can come by as they can in between calls for service. Okay? Now I can't promise you that they're going to be here at a certain time of day or when they will be here because as everyone knows, we're shrinking. We're not getting larger, we're getting smaller. Okay? Which one? Yeah, the non-emergency number, 301-279-8000. We also have a feature where you can text 911. This is in Montgomery County. I'm not sure about DC, but in Montgomery County, you can text 911. It'll go to a dispatcher. It'll go to a call taker, and they'll route that call the same way. Okay? All right. Any more questions? Okay. Alarm systems. Fire alarms. Install fire alarm systems that are connected to smoke detectors and sprinkler systems. Now, my friend Mr. Resnick will come and talk about the fire side, but this is just a quick overview. Intrusion alarms. Use intrusion alarm systems to detect unauthorized entry to the building. These alarms can be connected to doors, windows, and other entry points. Now, these are things that go to management as well to find out exactly what you have on your front doors to have alarms, with your concierge and panic alarms and things of that nature in case something happens, being as though you don't have security inside your buildings. Okay? Emergency response systems. Implement emergency response systems that allow residents to quickly alert security personnel or emergency services in case of an emergency. This can include panic buttons, intercom systems, or other mobile apps. Kind of getting ahead of myself, but I've done this a couple times. Commercial and residential crime prevention. Visibility. Increase visibility by ensuring that windows and entrances face each other. This allows residents and security personnel to observe activities in common areas and deter potential criminals. Lighting. Use good lighting in all areas, including hallways, stairwells, parking lots, and entrances. Well-lit areas reduce hiding spots for criminals and increase the likelihood of detection. Landscaping. Trim bushes and trees to eliminate potential hiding spots and ensure clear sight lines. Avoid using tall or dense vegetation near entrances and pathways. This is another thing that we spotted out and that we talked about as we did our walkthrough earlier this year. When we walked through the entire neighborhood, and we walked the entire thing, all the way down North Park, all the way back up Willard, and back on this side over here. Forgot the Wisconsin. Territorial reinforcement, property lines. Use physical design such as fences, walls, and hedges to define property lines and create a sense of ownership. This helps distinguish private spaces from public spaces and deter unauthorized access. Signage. Install clear and visible signage to indicate private property, restricted areas, no trespassing, and security measures in place. This can include signs for surveillance, cameras, access control systems, and emergency exits. Access control. Entry points. Restrict access to certain areas through the use of gates, locks, and security personnel. Ensure that entry points are secure and monitor to prevent unauthorized access. Controlled access. Implement controlled access systems for common areas such as gyms, pools, and laundry rooms. This can include key cards, biometric systems, or PIN codes. Visitor management. Use visitor management systems to track and control access for guests and service providers. And this is important because we see these in other places, especially when I was in the Silver Spring district. A lot of times we would have a lot of homeless people or people who were friends of other friends going into the buildings, and they would be in those buildings for days. Even at some points, they would actually have the actual key fobs to actually enter the building at any times that they wanted to. That gave them access to some private areas, such as pools. So be careful about those things and talk to your management. How do we do these things when it comes down to someone moving out or someone being evicted? Do we collect those fobs back? Do we deactivate those fobs? Okay. Regular maintenance. Upkeep, rapid removal of graffiti, repair broken windows and lights ASAP. Aesthetical appeal, maintaining a clean and well-kept environment to deter criminal activity. Routine inspections, conduct regular inspections of buildings, infrastructure such as stairwells, common areas. Identify and report any maintenance issues promptly to ensure a safe and secure environment. And this is, when you talk about graffiti, you don't want to make it look like if something happens and it stays for a while that it's acceptable here. Because if it becomes acceptable, then you'll have more people coming in and doing those types of nefarious activities. Okay? Aesthetic appeal. Keep your bushes trimmed. Keep the grass cut and things of that nature. Routine inspections. Conduct regular inspections of buildings, infrastructure such as stairwells, common areas. Those would include the lighting, the cracking in the stairs, trash, any kind of debris that would be left in there. When we did our walk through the neighborhood, remember with the house that's here, I think it's the Pink House. We did a walkthrough of the Pink House, and I went to check some of the areas there, and you can tell that there had been some visitors there that had left behind trash and bottles and things of that nature where they had been staying or going in there regularly. So I think now we've taken care of that, but that was one of the things that we indicated in the report for lighting and things of that nature. Community engagement. Resident interaction. This is important because the nosy neighbor is the one that we love because that's where we get our reports from, okay? And there's nothing wrong with it. If you see something, say something, okay? Encourage residents to know each other and report suspicious activities or persons. Community programs. Organize community safety meetings, activities such as National Night Out. This is a safety meeting. This is a good thing to have, okay? Even though we don't have every seat filled, this is important because each one of you will carry this information back. Volunteer initiatives. Encourage residents to participate in volunteer initiatives that contribute to the safety and well-being of the community. Invite the police to provide valuable insight and tips such as community walks, community events, etc. Elevator safety. Be cautious when entering the elevator. Do not get on the elevator with someone that makes you feel uncomfortable. Be aware of your surroundings. Stand near the control panel. Push the alarm button if you suspect trouble. Push as many floor buttons as possible so that you may exit as soon as possible. And this is important because this is something we probably never thought of before. Anytime you're in an enclosed structure like that, you always want to think about what you can do. Pay attention to what's going on around you, just a visible view, okay? And see what it is you can use to help you so that you don't become a victim of something like this, especially if you don't know, or this is a person who may have piggybacked and is on the floor with you and going where you're going, okay? Call someone on your cell phone. Garage safety. Stay alert. Pay attention to your surroundings and anyone nearby. If something doesn't feel safe, leave and park somewhere else. Notify security. And this is important because if you see a car that's moving where you're moving or parking close to where you're parking, you've never seen it before, there's nothing to say that you have to park. You can exit that structure. You can come down to the 2nd District Station, or you can use your cell phone to report exactly what's happening. And remember, if you don't want to use your cell phone, you can text 911 so that you don't have to be, so you won't make them think that you're trying to call, okay? Avoid distractions, texting, well, let me back up a little bit, okay? If you're leaving that structure, okay, because you don't want to be distracted in that particular environment where you're just stopping and start texting. If you're leaving that environment, you want to be safe about it, and you want to make sure no one knows what's going on, that you're calling the police, then you'll use the text feature, okay? Or use your Bluetooth, because everyone has Bluetooth in their vehicles now, okay? Call someone and keep them on the cell phone while you are in the garage so they can call or help if needed. Walk with confidence and beware, okay, of strangers. Personal safety walking. Beware of your surroundings. Carry only what you need. Charge your cell phone, your ID, one credit card, limited amount of cash if needed. Follow the rules of the road. Obey traffic signals and signs. Use crosswalks. Safety in numbers. Walk with others or let someone know where you are and what time to expect you home. And that's important, especially when we get into these months where we're going to be getting darker earlier. Okay? Carry a whistle or alarm. If you are being followed, use the whistle or alarm to draw attention to you by others. If you think you are being followed, change your route, go into a store, notify security, call the police. Carry a flashlight if you will be out after dark. If you live alone, do not advertise that you live alone. Always let someone know when you are going out and when you will return. A missing person is when they are missing. No 24-hour waiting period is required. Share your location with a family member or a close friend if your cell phone has that feature. Call 911 for emergencies, 301-279-8000 for non-emergencies, and text 911 if you cannot call. If you see something, say something. You are not bothering us. Call to report incidents, suspicious activity, even if a crime has not occurred. Police would rather come out and prevent a crime than wait and respond after a crime. Important information when reporting. Description: height, weight, race, gender, hair, color, hairstyle, glasses. Clothing description: describe clothing, color, shoes, hat. Other description: tattoos, language, accent, words used or slang. Vehicle type: type, model, tag number, tag state, damage, or color. Direction of travel: north, south, street name, or intersection. So if you know the intersection of where you are and what street name or what direction they're going to, just call out with that, let them know what it is. Let dispatch know what it is. If any weapon was used: type, a gun, rifle, shotgun. Color of weapon: if you do not know, it's okay. Just give us as much information as possible. All right. Have a sign-up sheet at the front desk for units that will be handing out goodies for Halloween with set times. I know you all, some buildings have the Halloween giveaway. Okay. Adult chaperone with children. Children should not eat any of the candy until it has been inspected by an adult. Okay. Costumes should fit to prevent tripping and or falls. Something outside units to indicate that they are participating in handing out candy. Safety is always in numbers, so go trick or treat in groups. All right, this is our station, and this is the address of where our station is located, down on Rugby Avenue. Any questions? Yes, ma'am. Mm-hmm. There's the button that you push there. That's not.
Thank you. I'm Jim Resnick from the fire department. If you're in an elevator that gets stuck, number one is don't panic. You're not going to run out of air or anything like that. Make yourself comfortable, perhaps, because whatever caused that stuck elevator may be happening not just to your elevator in your building, but if we've had like a thunderstorm and there's a power surge that goes through the electrical system in this area, it may be affecting a lot of buildings. So understand it may take some time. When you push that button, most of the time that button is connected to whoever the building's fire alarm is attached to. So if you're, I don't know, you're at 5550 Friendship Boulevard, or you're at 4620 North Park or whatever, each of those buildings has a contract with a different contractor who monitors their fire alarm and other systems. When you either pick up the phone or push the button in the elevator, depending on the type of system that there is, you are either sending a signal saying that elevator number 3 is stuck between the second and third floors, or you may be calling and reading the information that's on that elevator, again saying, you know, this is elevator number 4, and the lights say I'm stuck between 4 and 5 or something like that, or I'm on the 5th floor, but the doors won't open. That information is sent to the fire department. We would also ask that if your cell phone works, just like Officer Johnson was saying, call 911 or text 911. Either way is kind of the same thing. A stuck elevator is an emergency call. We do send immediately a fire truck with the right tools and equipment and training to be able to get you out of that elevator. Sometimes it's just as simple as us going to the elevator control room, shutting off the power, and then turning it back on, And kind of like my laptop, sometimes it needs that just to reset and do the right things. Sometimes, very, very rarely, but sometimes we just can't get it to operate, and we have to go ahead and we don't force the doors, but we have tools that will open the doors, and in extremely rare circumstances, we may have to put a ladder down, like through the hatch, and have people climb out. We don't like doing that. The safest way is just let the elevator start operating again. It will come to where it needs to go. So whoever asked that question, I hope that answers that.
Any more questions for Officer Johnson? I know one of the big things that always does come up in this community are the garages. And each of these buildings has a unique set of issues, I'll say, and challenges with their garages. Some have cameras, some don't. Some have alarm systems or a button you can push for help. Some do, some don't. So again, as Officer Johnson said, these are things that if you live in a condo, you can probably take it back to your condo board, and then they can talk with the management company or however the communication chain goes through your building. If you live in an apartment building, if you have a tenant association, then, and it's a strong one, then they can work with management to try and help solve some of the issues that you all are bringing up. But before we move on, is there anything else? Go right ahead. What I can say is that when we have, the safety committee does have a meeting with the property managers for all the properties. And the Willoughby does have they have a representative that comes every time. So we try to meet at least twice a year with the property managers, and that may be something that we can also bring back up, are some concerns that residents have in the buildings, and not single them out, but put it into all of them at the next management meeting. Okay, well, we're going to move on so that we can move the clock on, and we'll switch to fire now.
Thank you very much. That was not for me. That was for him. Damon, that was for you. Okay. Guess what I'm here to talk about? smoke alarms, carbon monoxide alarms, and all that other kind of stuff. Who here lives in a single-family house? You guys don't count because you only work here. You don't live here, okay? I know it's Friendship Heights, and I know it's nothing but high rises. There's, I know, I was going to say there's a rare couple of houses there. You live in an incredible community. It's a beautiful community. It is a safe community, okay? Every once in a while, turn off the TV or turn off the radio, okay? Not all the time, but sometimes. But let's talk fires, fire safety, and so on. I'm going to talk about a number of different items that are really big ticket items in terms of fire safety right now. When we're all done, I've got a table back there with some resources on it. Take whatever you want. If you want to make me really happy, and I'm hoping that you do, you'll take everything. So I don't have to take anything back to the office. But if you find that there are brochures and so on that you think would be valuable to some of your neighbors and friends and so on, please take as many of whatever as you would like. I'd also like to thank Officer Johnson for the handouts that he gave you, in particular the one about the making the right phone call, the right number to call. That is applicable to fire rescue as it is also to law enforcement, to the police. Also, the one about high-rise evacuation. That's a great brochure put together by NFPA, which is the National Fire Protection Association. And the National Fire Protection Association, basically almost everything in this room that we're in right now and in this building has something to do with NFPA standards and guidelines. So let's dive into some of that. There's two, when you talk about your building that you live in, whatever building you happen to live in, that building is actually from the fire department and the fire marshal end of the world, it's actually two different things. There's a commercial building part of it, and then there's the individual either owner or occupant part of it. And those have separate sets of rules, and those have separate sets of regulations and laws and other things that have to do with it. The common areas, so the lobby, the parking garage, the hallways, the trash room, the trash chute, those types of things in the building, the stairwells, those are what are part of what we consider to be a commercial structure, just like in any office building or anything like that. That is under the auspices and the regulation of the Montgomery County Fire Marshal, okay? The fire marshal is responsible for inspecting and making sure that the systems in those common areas meet the codes, that they've been tested, and so on. But as soon as you open the door to your unit or your apartment and you step over the threshold, now you are in personal space. And the fire marshal really almost has zero to say about what goes on in there. They have a little bit of say, but not much, okay? Remember what I said. You open the door and you cross the threshold because your door from your unit or your apartment into the hallway is part of that commercial space. And that's an integral part of your fire safety. Having a door that works. What do I mean by that? A door that closes. When I let go of that door, it closed on its own. And that is so important. Thank you. Well, first of all, thank you to Friendship Heights for having us here tonight. Thanks for the Safety Committee for having us here and the other committees that are represented here. We do appreciate this, okay? You mentioned earlier the fire at the Promenade up on Pooks Hill Road, which occurred on September 10th, 12th, something like that, okay? At about 11 p.m. On Sunday night or Monday night. I don't even remember right now. But I'm going to the Promenade to talk to them in about a week. So this is all rising to the top. Yes, sir. It does. Well, it does, except who is ultimately which agency or which department has the responsibilities. For owner-occupied condominiums, it's the Department of Housing and Community Affairs who has the most say about what happens inside your unit, not the fire marshal. In a rental property, it's the Housing Opportunities Commission who has the most say. But there's other pieces and parts to all of this. All right? It gets confusing. Uh-huh. Start with the public space. That would be the fire marshal's office. And what number would you call for the fire marshal? 311. Okay? And is that on that handout? No, I think that handout was published before 311 was actually a thing. Okay? 311 again is for non-emergency county services. So if you wanted Jim Resnick or Damon Johnson to come here and speak to your group, you could call 311 and say, hey, we're in Friendship Heights, we'd like to have a speaker come out, and they'd route you hopefully to the right places. But 311 will get you the fire marshal for a non-emergent question, issue, whatever, in terms of the common spaces. Not personal space. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Every one of this building that we're in right now, any one of the high rises around here, whether it's a condo building or a rental building, the fire marshal doesn't come around and walk every hall, test every fire alarm, check every sprinkler system or whatever like that. What the fire marshal does is they go behind the various contractors that have been hired by that building to take care of the fire alarm system, the sprinkler system, the elevators, and things like that. And what the fire marshal is doing when they do their annual inspection is, number one, they verify that all the records are correct to show that the trained, qualified, certified, licensed contractors have done their job, and they've filed the paperwork to show that they've done their work properly. Then the follow-up part of that is the fire marshal can choose to have the fire alarm system tested while they're physically there. They can do things like that. But most of it is kind of going behind the contractors that are doing that work. Mm-hmm. Public information. If I would go first through the building, and if the building doesn't provide it to you, then you can call 311 and ask to speak to someone in the fire marshal's office. All right? And it's supposed to be an annual inspection by the fire marshal's office. Sometime, occasionally there's a blizzard or there's something which, backs up things and so on. But I know that they try to stick to that. And I'm going to point out one final thing about the fire marshal's office. You'd think that the fire marshal's office would be part of the fire department. You would be wrong, okay? Montgomery County Fire Marshal's office is now part of the Department of Permitting Services. Wow. Of permitting services. Permitting. So if I'm going to do work on my building, I'm going to add a new elevator, I'm going to do some kind of work that involves electrical, gas, plumbing, things like that. If I own a single-family home like I do, and if I'm going to put an addition on, that's going to require building permits and other things like that. So the fire marshal is part of that permitting process. They have to review the plans. They have engineers in the fire marshal's office that review the plans. With that also comes inspections and so on. So for a long, long time, the fire marshal's office was part of the fire department, and what was happening was builders, developers, contractors were going crazy because to get all those other permits, building and electrical and plumbing, they'd go to one place, but then they'd have to drive to a totally different part of Montgomery County to go to the fire marshal's office. So they made the case, and I don't remember who it was, whether it was Doug Duncan or some county executive and county council back in the day, said, we hear you, and we're going to move the fire marshal out of the fire department and over to permitting services. Now, my world, I'm fire rescue, I'm community education, community outreach. We talk to the fire marshal's office on an hourly basis some days, okay? We're communicating with each other. It doesn't matter what department they're in, but it's different roles and responsibilities. Yes, ma'am. DHCA, Department of Housing and Community Affairs. Housing is rentals. But it gets sticky because if I live in a condo building, but I'm renting out my unit, I don't know. Talk to the lawyers. They'll figure out whose responsibility it is. Yes, ma'am. Yep. Yep. I love your question, and can I get to that in a bit? Because hold on, before we take more questions, I want to bring it back to what I was going to talk about before. There's the commercial part of things that the building is responsible for, the fire alarm system and sprinklers and anything like that. Then there is your stuff. Your stuff involves your own smoke alarms and your own carbon monoxide alarms. In some condo buildings, there may be a way that the condo association has said, we're going to buy in bulk smoke alarms, and we're going to have our maintenance staff take care of switching them out or testing them or changing the backup batteries or doing whatever. In other condo buildings, they go, you're the owner, have a nice time, okay? It's up on you. So from each building to the next, it's going to be something different, okay? Again, let me get through this part. I promise I'll yes. Yes. Go ahead. Yes. Okay. The short answer is I don't know, but it's kind of, here's the general answer. As soon as you cross the threshold and you're in someone's unit, they can kind of do whatever they want. And I don't know what the criteria would be that that's no longer a residence, but it's an office. It's probably both. And you know what? We all did that during COVID. Except for the police officers, because they couldn't, because they have to continue to do their job, and the fire department and so on. But my point is, what happens inside someone's unit, it's up to them. What I do in my house is kind of up to me. There are certain things that I might do which would affect the safety of others. If I have a meth lab in my apartment, that affects the safety of everyone around me. Okay, and that part is illegal. But to have a real estate business or something like that, or you know, people have shipments of Amazon stuff coming and going. You know, live your life. I do at some point. Hey, real quick. At some point in time, I got to talk about these things. No, a rental building. It is the responsibility of the landlord to provide the proper working device or devices in your home. Now, the renter, whoever's living there, they are responsible for testing it to make sure that it works. But it's the landlord's responsibility to have it there that is working. So if I test my alarm and it's not working, I need to let my landlord know using the proper channels to report that type of a maintenance issue. So if I'm just walking down the hall and I see the building maintenance person and I go, hey, my smoke alarm in 502 is not working, that's not the right system. You got to, either online, a phone call, or a form, or whatever the right thing is. Okay, so we got to have working smoke alarms. And if it's a rental property, and if there's any potential sources for carbon monoxide, we also have to have at least one carbon monoxide alarm. How many alarms and what kind of alarms is going to vary somewhat from one unit to another. Here is the most basic for people that live in a multifamily building, which is what we call high-rise residential buildings, apartments or condominiums. You need to have at least one working smoke alarm, and if there's carbon monoxide potential sources around, carbon monoxide. So this is both. This is smoke and carbon monoxide, and it has to be hardwired, meaning it's wired into the building's electrical system, and then this one has battery backup. There's 2 AA batteries in here, so if we have a situation where the power goes out, this will still work. That's the bare minimum. Now, depending on the age of the building, depending on renovations that you might have had done to your unit or maybe to the whole building, there may be a requirement for more than one of these. Also, the layout of your unit can dictate how many of these you need. These are designed to do 2 things for us. Smoke alarms are designed to do 2 things. The first thing that they're designed to do is to wake you up, to alert you that there's a problem, that there's potentially smoke in your home. The second purpose of these things is to protect the way out so I can get away from smoke or fire. So I'm going to use the kitchen as an example. Nobody sleeps in the kitchen, so there's no need to have a smoke alarm in the kitchen. Also, depending on the layout of your unit, most units just have one door from your unit out into the hallway, so the smoke alarm should be positioned somewhere where between where you're sleeping and where you're trying to get out. That's what the smoke alarm should be protecting. So if you have a den, if you have a study or something like that, that is probably not a place that you have to have a smoke alarm. Hardwired and so on. If you, as the owner of a condo, say, you know what, I want smoke alarms everywhere, that's on you. You can choose to do that. And because those other smoke alarms are supplemental, they're not required. You've chosen to get those. Those do not have to be wired in. You do not have to hire an electrician. You, on your own, could choose to get a battery-only alarm. This one only has batteries in it. It does not have any wires to connect to anything. And if you're going to have one that has batteries, the smoke alarm has to have a sealed 10-year battery. Not a 9-volt that you got to climb up on a ladder every 6 months and change out or anything like that. A sealed-in 10-year battery alarm. So there's your required alarms, and then you can choose to have supplemental. Kind of makes sense? If I'm a renter, I'm generally, and you got to read your lease, I'm generally not allowed to put a lot of holes in walls or ceilings or stuff like that. Most of your buildings, you're not going to put these things in the ceiling because the ceiling is usually concrete. So you're going to go high up on the wall. Smoke alarms make 3 repeating beeps. I'm not going to insult your ears right now by making these things beep, but a smoke alarm does beep, 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 beep. It keeps on repeating the 3 beeps like that. Carbon monoxide alarms make 4 short beeps. Beep, 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 beep. Beep, 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 and would keep on going like that. Different sound, different problem. A smoke alarm goes off. I can smell smoke. I can see smoke. I can see something's on fire, and that makes sense. What about carbon monoxide? Can't smell it, can't see it, can't taste it. None of our senses tell us that we're breathing in poison gas. So if a carbon monoxide alarm ever starts making the 4 beep sound, trust it. Just get out. All right? Now we're going to start talking because of the question that I started to hear before about getting out. Okay? The whole concept of smoke alarms, fire alarms, and things like that is that there's potentially something dangerous going on. And if there was a tiger in this room right now, what do you think I'd want to do? Well, I don't have a weapon, okay? So what am I going to do? Get out, right? If there is smoke, fire, carbon monoxide in my unit, what should I do? No, first 2 words are get out. Get out, get out, get out. Got it? Get out and do what with the door when I leave? The door is such an important part of your safety. A closed door, whether it's smoke or fire or carbon monoxide, it contains the problem. And when doors are left open, that's when big bad things happen, because what started as an isolated problem now becomes a community problem. Make sense? So if it's in your unit, get out and close the door. Do we want you to use the elevators in the event of a fire or similar emergency? No. In fact, there's a sign next to every elevator that says, in case of fire, do not use elevators. Do you think that those signs are on the elevators because the fire marshal is a jerk? No, he's not a jerk. I know the fire marshal. He's one of the kindest people you would ever want to know. But he doesn't want people to die in fires. And sadly, and we've had this happen in Montgomery County, we've had it happen all throughout the United States and throughout the world. People get on elevators during a fire emergency. It takes them to a bad place, meaning there's smoke and fire there. The doors open up, and where's my second exit? I don't have one. And the smoke acts like someone's holding the doors open, and people die. That is why it says, do not use the elevators in case of a fire. Make sense? So let's go to me, who is using a walker or a cane, or I'm in a wheelchair. Maybe I don't have legs, or something along those lines. What should I do if there's an emergency, a fire in my apartment? 2 words. Get out and close the door. By getting that one closed door between me and the bad stuff, I have provided tremendous safety, like probably at least 20 or 30 or 45 minutes of safety. There could be a raging fire in that apartment, but if that door stays closed and I'm on the other side of the door, I'm safe. Honest to God, they work that well. Now, if I really want to be safer, I want to get at least one more closed door between me and the bad stuff. Where can I go where there's another door? Stairwell. Or how about her apartment? She's my neighbor who lives right across the hall from me. If I go into her apartment and close that door, how many closed doors do I have now? I've just doubled my protection. And if in her apartment we then go into the back bedroom and close that door, we've tripled our protection. Closed doors save lives. Now that I'm in that safe place, who am I calling? Yeah, not the building manager, not the building engineer, not the front desk, not your friend, unless your friend works at the 911 center. That's when you would call 911. And what are you going to tell them? Okay, there's a fire. Here's the address. Here's the apartment number. And oh, by the way, I couldn't get downstairs, so I am now sheltered in place in such and such a location. Make sense? Is the fire department going to come to where you are, throw you over their shoulder, and carry you 10 stories down a ladder? No. Because when you called 911, they're going to ask you, is there smoke or fire where you are right now? And if you say, no, I'm over in her apartment, there's no smoke or fire in here, great, stay where you are. Make sense? Yes, sir. We have a key to every single apartment, every single condo unit everywhere. It's called an axe, okay? We will get in if we need to. Sometimes will we cause significant damage to the door and the door frame? Yeah. We're not going to check apartments or break in doors or whatever unless we have to. We don't just randomly do this. Here's what we care about, okay? There's a fire pick a building. There's a fire in apartment 508. Guess where the first fire department crews are going to go? 508. Try to put the fire out, search for people, and so on. Where are the next crews going? 608. Why? Fire goes up, heat goes up, smoke goes up, right? Where are we going to go next? Where are we going to send the next crews? 506 and 510 and 509. We're going to go next door and across the hall. We're going to check those places. Then we're going to go to 408. If I'm the chief and I can send my crews to those places quickly, then do I really care that much about you if you're in 417 or 903? No, because I was able to contain the problem. That's the approach that the fire department has. I get a lot of people who say, ooh, I'm handicapped, or my family member, or my neighbor, whatever. Should there be a list of all the people in the building? Guess what? That list is worthless because maybe they're out at the movies right now. Maybe they're shopping. Maybe they're at the doctor's. Maybe they moved. I don't know. The list is only as good as the second someone puts their name on it, and then it's invalid. It doesn't provide any useful information for the fire department, okay? So I'm not a big fan of those lists. The one in almost 49 years of fire service career, I have used those lists once, and that was at 4701 Willard Avenue, which is now the Willard Apartments. It used to be called the Irene. Big electrical fire after a blizzard. Julian, were you around for that? That was a great time, wasn't it? That was 2004 or 5, I think, something like that. The building had to be completely, there was not smoke or fire in the building, but there was no electricity, and we had about 2 feet of snow on the ground, and it was supposed to go down to like 12 degrees that night. No power in the building, no elevators in the building, no lights, no nothing. We had to evacuate that entire building. We used a list 7 or 8 hours into the event just to double and triple and quadruple check that everyone had been accounted for. But honestly, the list really wasn't that useful because of all those other considerations. Get out, call 911, get out, close doors, and call 911. The fire at the promenade the other night grew significantly because the people in the apartment delayed calling 911. They attempted to fight the fire. They had no business doing that. They did not know what they were doing, and then they left the door from the hallway open. That's how things get bad. It's that simple. All right? Smoke alarms should be less than 10 years old. You may need a handyman or an electrician to switch them out for you. If they're hardwired, you don't need an electrician for something like that. And one last thing, and then I'll take more questions. Has nothing to do with fires. File of life, okay? If you don't have one and you think you need one, I've got them. This has nothing to do with fires. This has to do with medical emergencies. There's two parts to the File of Life. The first part is this beautiful red plastic holder. Isn't it lovely? It's amazing. On the back of it, this black strip is a magnet, so it will stick to your refrigerator. If it doesn't stick to the front of the refrigerator, it'll stick on the sides. If it doesn't stick on the sides, then get a piece of tape and tape it to the refrigerator. We aim for the refrigerator, but more important than this thing is this thing. The form itself is a front and back form in which you write your basic medical information. Your name, your address, your date of birth, your doctor's name, that kind of stuff. Any kind of medical conditions that you might have, allergies, medications, emergency contacts. Who would you want us, either the fire department, the police, the hospital, whatever, to call if you can't make a call yourself to say, hey, I'm in the hospital or something like that. Insurance information and any health care decisions that you might have made. Do not put this on your refrigerator if it's not filled out. You want to see paramedics get really pissed? I've been on calls before where there were 6 of these on someone's refrigerator and all of them were blank. Worthless. Okay, did you like that dramatic effect? All right, how are we doing time-wise, and take a couple of questions? The first thing I'm going to do, and I'm not going to do it right now, is I'm going to, if there's other people in the unit with me, I'm going to yell and scream for them to get out now. There's a fire in the kitchen. Get out now and call 911. That's what I'm telling them to do. Then I'm going to take care of myself. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to protect my skin. I'm going to put on the biggest, longest oven mitt or something like that to protect myself. All you got to do is go one time to a burn center and you'll never want to get burned, okay? So I protect my skin. The next thing I do is I shut off the heat source, so turn the burner off. Next, I'm going to get a pot, a lid, or a cookie sheet or something metal that will completely cover the pot, the pan, whatever is burning now. I'm not going to put it on by reaching over and putting it down like this, because that way I had to put my hand into the flame. Instead, I'm going to slide it across. And what should that do? There's no more oxygen. It used up the oxygen, the fire used up the oxygen, and the fire should go out. Then, do you know what I do next? Nothing. For 2 or 3 or 4 hours. Do not touch the pot, the pan, or whatever. This is where we see people slip up a lot. They think I'm going to pick this up and I'm going to either put it in the sink or I'm going to put it out on the balcony or something like that. Is there still heat in that pot or pan? Absolutely. It's very, very hot. Is there fuel, meaning something that can burn? Oil, food, whatever it was that was burning. Yeah, that's still in there. So what's missing? There's 3 things we need for fire. Oxygen. So if I'm going to pick that up and carry it, and if that lid or that cookie sheet moves the slightest bit, the oxygen goes in and it flares up. I drop it, and now I've got burning material, which is probably splashed on me. It's probably splashed around on the cabinets, the floor, the furnishings, and so on. I can't tell you how many times I've seen exactly this scenario. So the better answer is leave it on that stove. Do not touch it for 2 or 3 or 4 hours until it's cool enough that you can touch it with your bare hands. Then you can wash it out, throw it out, do whatever. You know what you do during those 2 or 3 hours? Well, you already told everyone to call Domino's because they deliver. Seriously, okay? Does that answer your question? Okay. I hate the blankets. What did I say about fire? Fire good or fire bad? Let's keep it simple. Fire good or fire bad? Fire bad. If I've got this blanket and they're saying I'm supposed to smother the fire, what does it have me doing? Going towards the fire. Those fire blankets are not tested or approved by NFPA or Underwriters Lab or anyone else. There's all these claims that you can use them and reuse them and this and that. It's a bunch of, okay? In the old days, they called those snake oil salesmen, okay? Maybe they'll work. I don't know. I'm not putting my life on the line. I'm going to do what my number one answer is if I have any doubt at all about me being able to control that fire, get out, close the door, call 911. Keep it simple. Keep it to do the same thing every time. Yes, sir. Thank you for asking that question because that's the central point here. If the alarm goes off, it means the building might be on fire. 2 words. Get out, okay? Everyone who is physically able to evacuate needs to evacuate now. Not let's give it 5 minutes or 10 minutes or 20 minutes and see what happens. Get out now. Do you know who didn't do well during Hurricane Katrina? People that delayed getting out. It's the same in any kind of an emergency. Have a plan, take action now. Now, for those who cannot evacuate for any reason at all, why can't I evacuate? Because I live on an upper floor and I'm in a wheelchair, or a walker, or a cane, or I have cognitive issues and I can't understand what's going on and evacuate. Or I go to leave my apartment and there's smoke in the hall. I can't get out. What do we do for people who can't get out? Get behind at least one closed door. If you can get behind more, that's better. And then call 911. Keep it simple. Yes, ma'am. Yep. Here's the, can I answer, or is there more to that question? And that's trouble. When there's an alarm and we ignore it, that's trouble. Then we get complacent, and then really bad things can happen. The short answer is this. I don't know where the fire is when I'm the fire department. Unless someone calls up and says it's in apartment 302, I don't know. Since I don't know, you probably don't know, and therefore play it safe and just get out. Is it an inconvenience? Heck yeah, okay? Absolutely it's an inconvenience. But better to be inconvenienced than to be a victim of smoke inhalation, burns, whatever else like that. Last night I was on duty. I'm a volunteer at Bethesda Chevy Chase Rescue Squad. We went to an apartment building on Battery Lane. Someone had pulled the fire alarm, and I'm walking around with my firefighting gear. I'm checking each hallway, and I got people going, should I stay? The fire alarm's going off. No, get out. So those who can must get out. I want to point out one other thing real quick. I don't know, with the lighting here is not great. Can you see the difference in the color of these? That's a clue, okay, that this alarm here in my left hand is too old. Over time, they discolor, okay, really, really, really. So again, 10 years maximum lifespan. Oh, I thought that was a question hand. Oh, you're doing a good job. Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry. What, fire drills. So the short answer is there's no requirement in the fire code to have fire drills. There is if you're a school. There is if you're a hospital or a nursing home. For certain kinds of places, there are requirements for fire drills, but in a residential setting, it is not required at all. And what I have found over the years when I've tried to work with communities that have wanted to do fire drills is you know who's going to show up and you know who's not going to show up. And it's not going to change. Sometimes, you know, and when we're sitting out there going, well, this person came and that person didn't and this person came, maybe they're not home. Maybe they physically can't get out because of their disabilities. I don't expect to see them out. So the reality is you don't really gain a lot from my perspective from having those fire drills. But what I tell people who physically can walk down the stairs is this: have your own fire drill. Tomorrow, if you're going to the grocery store, instead of taking the elevator down, walk down the stairs. If you know this stairwell, try using another one to see where that takes you out. And like you said, how long it takes you. Yeah. It's a personal kind of a thing that you're going to have to do on your own. Yes, ma'am. Sure. Yep. If there's smoke in the hallway, I'm closing my door, and then I'm going farther back in my unit, and I'm closing that door, and I'm calling 911, and I'm saying, I'm in apartment such and such, and there's smoke in the hallway. That 911 call is huge. And if we get 80 phone calls from one of your buildings, that's okay. Understand, you may have to wait until you speak to an operator because they're stacked up because of all those calls. But call 911. Don't hang up. Stay on the phone until you talk to a human being. Yes, ma'am. Here's the problem with putting a wet cloth over your mouth. And we kind of learned this with COVID, with the different masks and what was effective and what was not effective, a regular medical mask versus an N95 and so on. In a fire, there is a lot of things in that smoke that are really, really bad. Things like hydrogen cyanide and carbon monoxide. And if you take a whiff of those, and those will penetrate that rag or that washcloth with water, that hydrogen cyanide does not care about that. It's going to go right into your lungs. That'll make you stop breathing, okay? Also, in many fires and with the smoke, there is deficient oxygen because the fire has used up a lot of the oxygen. So that smoke is poisonous on many, many, many levels. What do firefighters do when we show up? What do we have on our back? Not oxygen. It's just regular breathing air. I don't want to take oxygen into a fire, but I'm going to take breathing air into the fire because the air is poison. So no, the fires of today are different than the fires from 50 years ago. And that is why that's our message. Okay?
Okay, we got one more person to give us a brief update.
Oh, my goodness.
But we want to thank you, Jim. Thank you very much. There'll be a lot of questions coming.
I'm sure.
We want to give one last aspect to our safety in our community, and so Lieutenant Elkin is going to bring us up to date on crime issues and some things that are going on.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Lieutenant Ari Elkin from the 2nd District, and first I'll tell you that when Jim Resnick speaks, I highly recommend you listen. This is probably one of the most experienced person in the fire department. I'm in my 29th year, and I'm sitting back there, I learned several new things just from listening to him. And Jim, I could probably listen to you all day long, but I don't think there's a single government employee in this county that's worked harder for the folks of Montgomery County than Jim, so he is amazing. I'm the Deputy Commander of the 2nd District here in Bethesda, and we have, the good news I have to report is that things have been relatively quiet in the Friendship Heights area. I will touch on a very high-profile incident that occurred about, I think it was a week ago or 10 days ago, which was a lady who was stabbed at the Friendship Heights Metro. by an unknown assailant. The person who stabbed her was caught, was apprehended. He is currently incarcerated and charged with attempted murder. So he will be prosecuted. I can tell you that it does appear it was a completely random and unprovoked attack. They do not know each other. There's the potential that this person, the person who committed the act has a criminal history. Clearly, we do believe that there is a mental illness component to that individual. However, there may be some other things that we're looking at as far as why he chose to attack that particular person. So, but I am happy to report that she has been discharged from the hospital, and she is recovering at home with her family. So she was very lucky. That was very close to being not a even worse event. But to tell you, what I will tell you is that, which was great to see, Good Samaritans that kept an eye on our suspect, followed the suspect, but did not engage, which is great, but gave us real-time information, so we were able to make that apprehension fairly effortlessly. We also worked very well with the Metro Transit Police, who provided valuable information immediately on the scene with access to their camera systems, and we all coordinated very well together, so it worked out in that respect. We did experience a rash of commercial burglaries, the T-Mobile store, Saks Fifth Avenue, and then several commercial establishments in MacArthur Boulevard that all seem to be related and connected to incidents that occurred in the DMV. One of the things we have done, and some of you may have already seen it, is we installed one of our mobile security camera trailers right at the intersection of Wisconsin and Western Avenue up on the property of the Wisconsin, I think it's called the Shops at Wisconsin. And so far it has proven to be very valuable. This particular unit is one of the newest security camera trailers that we have in our fleet. So it has multiple camera angles. It is connected to our real-time crime center so that we can access those cameras in real time. And we also turned on the feature where from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. at night, the red and blue lights are flashing on it. So that is meant to give, some high visibility and be a deterrent. But the folks at Sephora, Bloomingdale's, Capitol Grill, and the security staff that work there have told me that whatever loitering they were experiencing has come quickly to an end. And we've also been able to access, video looking right at the Friendship Heights Metro. So it is been worth its weight in gold at this point. And since I am in charge of that program, I will tell you that trailer is going to be staying there for quite a while. So the only other thing that we kind of have seen, we have the ongoing issues with Amazon Fresh, with the shoplifting at the Amazon Fresh. We did do a retail theft blitz where we had undercover officers that observed and made an arrest. However, probably within 4 hours of that being over, and they left. Every day they have episodes there. We have engaged Amazon quite a bit about giving them ideas of what to do, as we have with other CVS and every other place that's experiencing this. I will tell you that it's really not as much of a police problem as it is a retailer issue as well, because we have made recommendations about how to merchandise their product, where to put it, and their corporate folks have made their decisions, and they're living with it. So we do the best we can. We have made quite a few arrests all over the place, but as you can imagine, on the scale of someone being stabbed and catching someone who committed, charging with attempted murder versus a misdemeanor shoplifting, we have priorities, and we have to use our limited resources the best we can. Probably the last thing I would touch on is, I'll touch on a couple quick things that Damon spoke about. As far as folks coming into your apartment buildings and doing work, different contractors, most legitimate people will have no problem with you asking them to see their ID, their work ID. And that is something that I used to do when I lived in an apartment building. If I didn't see someone, or even when they solicit in my neighborhood, it is, I don't just say, hey, I'm Joe from so-and-so. Joe, let me see your ID from so-and-so organization. If they're legit, they will be more than happy to show you their identification. If they're not legitimate, they may be apprehensive, or they may challenge you back. And in that case, I do not want you to engage them further. You just mind your business, and you can call 911, 279-8000. I will tell you, I differ with, Damon was not wrong with what he said. I differ with a little bit about what number to call. I will tell you, and Jim, correct me if I'm wrong, there are rare times when we are just overwhelmed at the 911 center. I will say during storms, during, emergency events that are hitting the region, yes. But if it's the middle of the day and you're trying to figure out who to call 911. It goes to the same building. We'll sort it out. We'll figure it out. But I don't want you sitting around wasting time trying to ask yourself, what number should I call? Call 911. Our call takers, they're picking up the same phone line. The only time it will ever really matter is if we're in, like sort of all hands on deck posture, and then, we want the non-emergency stuff to stay there and not ring up in the 911, take over a 911 real emergency. But those are far and few between. So, who? Oh yeah, fraud. So, and I still think we need to get one of our detectives up here. So when I look at our crime data and most importantly our calls for service in this exact, it's called a police reporting area. Friendship Heights has its own police reporting area. One of the highest call volumes we have, and I don't hear them on the radio, and I don't always see them, is for a fraud that occurred earlier. So we are getting a lot of calls for frauds in the Friendship Heights area where, people preying on calling you with every kind of scam, out there. And now the latest one, and I got a call recently saying that my daughter was arrested down in South Carolina at 1 in the morning, and I started laughing when I got the call because A, I was up, I was lucid, and 2, I'm in law enforcement, and obviously, so but I'm like, yeah, I'm sure you're, and I have a conversation with those people, and it's pretty interesting. But I will tell you, and you can take it to the bank, you can bet the mortgage on it, no one is going to call you over the phone demanding money or say that they've got your loved one held hostage, or that if you don't give us your money now, we're going to do this or that. The IRS isn't going to do it over the phone. The police department, we had myself and Lieutenant Johnston at Bethesda Station, we were notified that there were people posing as us saying, hey, if you don't turn yourself in, if you don't pay this amount of money, and we did launch an investigation. So, and these schemes are getting more complicated and more sophisticated by the day because they just know that for every 100 calls they make, they're going to get one, and that's good enough. So just pass the word out, and especially for folks who who might not be cognitively, be able to process, and it is, and I will tell you, it is as nasty as these folks that do this have AI analytics that comb, the death rolls, who's just passed away, all of these things, so they look for specific demographics, and they have ways of generating that information and finding you, and it is absolutely horrific. So, but that is the highest volume we have of calls, and again, because there's no suspect information, it's not a call that's being dispatched to a patrol officer, so it's not coming over the radio. But when I get the reports and I see what calls were handled in this area, I'm like, my God, there's been a lot of fraud calls in Friendship Heights. They generally target older populations, and however, I have friends in their 20s that have been scammed, so it just depends. And the one person, a buddy of mine, he had been arrested, so, and people think that, oh, because I had been arrested before for something, this person posed as, a bondsman who, well, you owe this money for whatever, and, it's like the consciousness, and a person who I thought was fairly intelligent. So, but it happens to everybody, so just beware. That's really, does anyone have any questions about anything else that might be, you want to know about the 2nd District? Whoa, there we go. Go ahead, yeah. Yep. Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. they're late. They're running late. Yep. Yeah. So I can tell you that, you know, the off-duty patrol that is here, they do monitor and enforce the traffic signs. At the end of the day, though, you're right. People are running late. They're running late to their appointments. I've seen it with my own eyes. You still, as a pedestrian, have to keep your situational awareness about you. I mean, I am down here. I work down here also in off-duty capacity, and I do see folks that are literally walking through the head down because they're in a, you know, looking at the phone or not paying attention, and that's, you can't do that. It's just not, we're just not in that in an area. You're in a very urban environment with a lot of people that drive cars. And I can tell you, it's not, maybe not the answer you want to hear, but there's not much more that can be done because Friendship Heights does a lot with, you know, everything from the, you know, signage to the you know, bumps, speed bumps, off-duty police during the peak hours during the day. There's not much more that you could possibly done. So yes, there'll never be an end. People will always speed. People will always run stop signs, unfortunately, and we just have to, as a pedestrian, you do have to be careful. But there is enforcement that does take place. So, go ahead, sir. Yep. It is a very safe area. Yeah, and I will say that, you know, it is getting darker earlier, you know, as we all know, and what that does and this time of year brings are people that are wearing heavier coats, that are covered up more, and there is, and that it gets darker earlier. People, we do see street crime tend to increase a little bit during this time of year. It's the holidays. People are carrying gifts, you know, going shopping. You know, I will tell you that street robberies, I overall have decreased, and they've decreased for a lot of reasons. Apple Pay, people don't carry as much cash on them anymore. Credit cards, you know, all of those things that, like Damon said, you shouldn't be out there with a lot of cash. You should not be out there with tons of credit cards in this day and age. I mean, there are so many other ways to pay that, you know, it's, so those things, just like Uber has helped reduce the amount of DUIs and people driving on the roads intoxicated, we're seeing the same thing with those types of street robberies, yeah. So, but it is a very safe area, yeah. And I will say also with the development that's coming in, the redevelopment of Mazda Gallery and more stores coming in, you're going to see the more energy and the more sort of life that comes back to this, or more life that comes into this area, I think will also be helpful too. So, yes, ma'am. Mm-hmm. And I agree with you, and I appreciate that. I used to supervise our fraud unit, and they are hands down some of the best investigators we have on the police department. They recently made the arrest for the Gold Bar scam. That was a pretty high profile case. And a quick funny story that'll take 2 seconds. One of my first, when I was a very young officer, my mother was a fairly prominent realtor in this area for 40 years. And she got a scam, someone who posed as, the buyer of, one multi-million-dollar real estate and wanted to do some deals with her. And my mom called me. She's like, I think there's something weird about it. And long story short, I said, okay, well, I got the fraud unit involved, and the folks were from West Africa, and we set up a sting operation literally in her house. And 2 people showed up. I had FBI there, Secret Service, myself, and the surprise to them when they walked in, said what they needed to say to make it the crime, cement the crime. And they got 10 years in federal prison. And because we then did a search warrant at their apartment in Prince George's County, they were making counterfeit money. They did this to realtors up and down the East Coast, and they had seen my mother. They were targeting realtors that were in the like the high-end real estate magazine, only for like exclusive properties. And I even found the one, I have it in a frame actually at my house, where they circled my mother and put big stars by it, and so that sits in a frame. Yeah, so it happens, and it happens a lot more than people think. Yep, that's where it started. I mean, yeah. I tell people all the time, you were given, the 6th sense. If the hairs on the back of your neck are standing up, trust your instincts, and it applies to everything. So, there you go.
Thank you, Lieutenant Elkin. One more thing before we close, and I'll let Julian close. On behalf of the Safety Committee, we hope you learned some things and got some information. And there's a lot of information to take in the back, and you have the phone numbers. And please share this information with your neighbors, your building managers, your homeowners association. We're trying to do as much as we can to keep everybody safe and updated on what's going on in the community. And without further ado, Julie.
Thank you to all our speakers. Thank you all for coming. I just wanted to recognize Councilmember Cheryl Tyler and the Safety Committee for putting this program on. Really appreciate it. Thank you all. Good night.